Позади хати or McDonald's?
Bizarrada. I was very blindsided when it happened. Ukraine's not our problem. They're far away. They're not even part of the EU. They're not part of America. When I'm there, I didn't feel right.
This war is not just someone else's war.
This could be my grandmother. This could be my neighbor. No.
Have you done anything bad, Johnny?
It's illegal. Johnny's only there to become rich. He's only there for the women. I am trying to do something good. Kharkiv, Samoluchi. Life in Kharkiv before the war, was better than life in Kyiv. War is not just the trench. This war can only be won with military support. But I do feel at home in Ukraine.
Why choose war?
Yeah,
Друзі, ви на каналі «Хвилює». Програма про те, що непокоїть українців сьогодні найбільше. Сьогодні наші гості – іноземці, які колись зробили вибір не поїхати, залишитися або приїхати в Україну вперше. Hi, Johnny.
Hello, Diakuyu for having me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. To start, you've been living in Ukraine for quite a while.
More than 4 years.
More than 4 years. And I have some Ukrainian Czech questions for you.
Please.
You got to make a choice this
Okay.
time. Choices are not easy. Okay? Ready?
Sure.
Позади хати or McDonald's?
Bizarrada.
Борщ or солянка?
Borscht.
Left Bank or Harlem?
Left bank.
Паляниця or bagel?
Oh, that's hard. I can't pronounce Polonitsa, so bagel.
Bagel, okay. Верка Сердючка or drag queens?
Yeah, skip.
No. You got to make a choice.
No, I skip.
Mayo or sour cream?
Probably sour cream. Smetana.
Smetana.
Yeah.
Kharkiv or Kyiv?
Kharkiv, Samoluchi.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's an unexpected choice.
No, I love Kharkiv, yeah.
Yeah. But you live in Kyiv.
I live in Kyiv because this is the international hub.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to be in Kyiv very often to either meet with people or do an interview like this. You can't do this in Kharkiv, unfortunately. But Kharkiv is a better place to live.
When things get better, do you think life can get to the level of Kyiv in Kharkiv?
I think the life in Kharkiv before the war, was better than life in Kyiv.
Right.
I mean, instead of walking down Kreshchatyk and having, cars drive like they're on a highway, you have Shevchenko Park. You have all these nice restaurants. It's calm. Kids playing with family with strollers. It was a very nice place to live.
You actually can be legally can be considered a citizen of Kharkiv. You own an apartment there, from what I know.
I own an apartment there. I'm not a citizen in Ukraine, but I do have permanent residency.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the American green card.
Oh, okay, but it's not forever though, is it? Or is it forever?
Well, it's permanent residency, right. But after 10 years, I need to renew it.
Mm-hmm. And you have to apply again, or just go show up with the card?
I think they just checked to make sure I didn't do anything too bad in the last 10 years.
Have you done anything bad, Johnny?
Maybe I got some speeding tickets, but that's it.
Speeding tickets? Do you have Ukrainian driving license?
No. I have tried to get the Ukrainian driver license, and I don't know if I can say this on air.
You can.
But this is before the war, and everyone said, "What are you doing? You're stupid. Just pay for it." And I said, no. I'm going to do it the correct way.
Yeah.
I want to be like a good, citizen. So I read the requirements. I said, okay, I see these 5 steps. I will do it. First step, go and get this medical certificate that says you're fit to apply for the license. This took me 4 days. Every day I went. They said, okay, now come back tomorrow to see, this other doctor, psychiatrist or some specialist or something. And I said, I cannot just do this in one day. They're like, no, come back tomorrow. 4 days later, finally got the stamp. Complete waste of time because most of them didn't check anything. And then went to try to do the test. And they said, I'm sorry, it's only in Ukrainian. You cannot use a translator. We don't have the test in English. And I'm so sorry. My, rozumію українські трохи, really bad. I can't take the test. And they're like, just drive with your American license. No one cares.
Although it's illegal.
It's illegal. So now I'm in this bad situation where it's illegal to drive on an American license or a foreign license, but it's impossible to get a Ukrainian license.
So you're illegally legal. Only in Ukraine.
Only in Ukraine. Life in the gray zone.
Johnny, you are well known as one of the most prominent YouTube bloggers who talk about things that are happening in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
You got your audience, thousands of people follow you. You are also a citizen of the United States of America.
Yes.
On February 24th, 2022, similarly to us Ukrainians, you woke up to sounds of explosions.
Yes.
But differently from us, you had a choice to leave and chill on California beaches or stuff like that. And nevertheless, you are here today in Kiev with us. Why choose war?
Yeah, toot. So prior to February 24th, 2022, I was already living here. I had bought my apartment. I had friends here. I had a normal life. And I got to know the Ukrainian people. And I also knew that there was no reason for this war to start. Despite all the Russian propaganda on the Nazis or biolabs or whatever BS, I knew none of that was true. So if you asked me, January 2022, I would have said there's zero chance that Russia is going to invade because all the reasons they said that they would do it or they have to do it is all BS. I also knew that prior to then, Ukrainians and Russians had a very good relationship and there was no reason to start a war over it, So I was very blindsided when it happened. It shook me and it woke me up, literally, physically, with the attacks, but also emotionally. I had to look myself in the mirror and say, this is a reality. This is real life. And I'm very lucky that I have the U.S. passport. I have enough money in the bank where even if I abandoned my apartment here, I can still live a very good life somewhere else, in Thailand or back in the U.S. And I tried it for last winter. I was in Thailand. The year before that, I went to Greece. And when I'm there, I just didn't feel right because I knew how many people in Ukraine were suffering and that the Western media kind of stopped talking about it or didn't show everything that's happening, the suffering of people, the everyday lives of people. It was only about, the front line, but there's so much more to a war. There's so many more people that are affected. And I knew I was in a very unique position where I have this large YouTube audience, almost 250,000 people, and almost all of them are foreigners or Westerners, American. And I knew I had a very unique voice to be able to show what's really happening and also to help raise money for the people who need it. Unfortunately, that also comes with a lot of negative attention. So I'm sure in the comments of this video, people are going to, mostly probably Russians or people who are against Ukraine, or maybe they're just bots, but they're going to say all sorts of crazy stuff. They're going to say Johnny is a CIA, FSB, SBU, just whatever it is, they'll say that. They'll say, oh, Johnny's only there to become rich. He's only there for the women. He's only there to, kick dogs. I don't know what they will say, but there's always going to be negative attention when you're trying to do something good. But at the end of the day, I understand I am trying to do something good and I am helping in the way I can. So that's why I stay.
But the good, correct me if I'm wrong, but the good balances out the bad. Like all the fundraisers are noticed, like almost every second or third video you do on Ukraine is a fundraiser video. And I know, speaking to you and speaking to some people from your circle, that you do raise money and donate that both for humanitarian and military needs.
Yes.
So the good balances out the bad. And my question would be, we're now on the third year of full-scale invasion. Your audience is primarily Western audience. Did you notice a drop? If we look like at the graphics of donations or attention, is it stable? Is it going down? Where are we?
So the very first year of the war, people were very happy to donate. They just didn't know where to donate to. Americans and people from the West in general, we are very quick to open our wallets, open our homes when something first happens. But we also have a very short attention span and we want things to get done very quickly. It's just our personality. Whether you say it's good or bad, that's just how we are. We will act very fast, but we also expect things to have some result or finish within a very short amount of time. And unfortunately, with Putin not giving up this war and Russia not giving up this war, even though they're not having any success, they're basically just waiting for the West to forget about it. They're waiting and hoping that with the problems in the U.S., especially with our kind of division during election season, that people will just say, you know what, Ukraine's not our problem. They're far away. They're not even part of the EU. They're not part of America. Let's let them deal with their own faults, the own issues. So I have absolutely noticed a huge drop, but the people who understand what is important for the future of democracy, the future of the free world, and just the future of stability. These people, unfortunately, are the ones that, I don't want to say are more intelligent, but usually better educated, and also people in a better position of power. So people in the government, they understand it's important. People that have a lot of money, who have a lot of connections, they understand how important it is. So even though my personal audience that watch my videos, they've stopped donating to humanitarian, or maybe a lot of them don't want to donate to the military, but we can always find the people who have big pockets and say, you know what, this is important, we need to do it.
It's interesting that you mentioned the class, like more educated or in a better position, and understanding and perception of this war, representatives from different social circles is obviously different. But we also know that those in power or those with big pockets who realize what democracy is and what the values are make the minority. And we need the majority to empower the minority to provide the funds or allocate resources. You make content for simple people. Let's say there's a Jack somewhere in Ohio and he's planting corn. And what would be your recommendation on methods on spreading awareness and making Jack understand this war is not just someone else's war?
So what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to show the other side of the war and just showing normal life. One of the videos that doesn't seem like a big deal on the outside, but really I had the best comments in terms of people saying thank you for showing real Ukrainians and showing the faces of who's suffering, was I went to one of the local markets where every Sunday on Jean Macana Street, you have vendors who are selling fruits and vegetables. And I went there, I filmed, what's in season. I talked about, the local farmers coming here and who the local residents that walk here. I showed the grandmothers with little push carts, and people got to see like real Ukrainians, and they normally don't see this. In the war, they only see people who are, either fighting or running from the fight. This is showing like real life. And when people, saw their faces and I talked to a few of them, they're like, oh, this could be my grandmother. This could be my neighbor. This can be, someone just like me. And then it makes them have more of a connection to Ukraine versus just seeing what's on TV, which I think most people don't understand. Anyone who's never been through a war, it's impossible to understand, and they shouldn't understand. And I hope they never need to understand. But war is not just the trench or just the battlefield. War affects the entire country and affects the people wherever they are. And it's not 24 hours of bombardment. It's not 24 hours of shooting. Even in the trenches, it's not 24 hours. There's lulls and breaks. But when people see it on TV, and it doesn't matter what news channel it is, all they see is a highlight of the attack. And that's why it's so easy for some Russian propagandists to make a comment like, life in Kyiv looks normal. People are out drinking and having fun. Where's the war? The war is fake. The war, it's a green screen. It's, it's people just trying to launder money. All these excuses, it makes it somewhat believable for very gullible people, very naive people, uneducated people, but also the people who just are unhappy with their own circumstances, and they want to blame why they have low income or bad roads, on the government, and saying, well, because the government is helping Ukraine, therefore we have bad roads in my city, even though it has nothing to do with each other.
You're very empathetic, and you're showing this in a very empathetic way, the content that you shoot, and by that making people relate and understand more about what's really going on. It's not just trenches, it's life just as anyone else's life.
Yeah.
This empathy that you have, something that I noticed about yourself a while ago, and I want to quote something that you wrote in your blog. I don't remember too much about my childhood, except that by the time I was in the 4th grade, I was responsible for taking public transportation to school every day, sitting next to crackheads and the homeless. We lived in the expensive city of San Francisco, and my parents worked low-income labor-intensive jobs since they're both immigrants from Taiwan with limited English. I find this quote interesting because your parents are immigrants. You're a second-generation immigrant in the States. And from what I know, they themselves are children of political refugees from mainland China to Taiwan. So your grandparents were refugees themselves, immigrated to Taiwan, and then your parents made it to America. You were born as a free child, but not any means a child of war, but you carry that generational, say, stamp, and you find yourself in Ukraine nowadays, fighting totalitarianism, helping democracy win. Do you think your life would have been different and you would have been less empathetic to what's going on, might you had a different background?
Sometimes I wish I was less empathetic, because my life personally would be a lot easier if I didn't care so much about others. I also wouldn't take the negativity so to heart. One thing I really admire about Ukrainians is they understand that if some random person anonymously commenting is saying something untrue about them, they don't even respond, because they're like, it's not true, and anybody who knows me knows it's not true. So who cares what the what the duck is saying to the to the farmer, but I do think that maybe deep down inside there was this connection of the fight for freedom and fight for stability, throughout generations. I didn't really understand it until war came to Ukraine. I knew that my father, as a young child, was carried by my grandmother by horseback from northeastern China all the way down to the coast, and then they had to take a boat to Taiwan, and it was a very treacherous journey for him and his 5 or 6 siblings. So it was, I can't imagine that being easy. But today in 2024, and then especially in the last 2 years, there's been millions of people just inside Ukraine who had to abandon their homes and run from an aggressor, an attacker, and the communists who took over China, and the Russians, who technically are not communists anymore, but they're very related. It's almost the same story happening again, 1 or 2 generations later. And I do remember my mom being very upset when I first decided to move, even to Asia, but then especially when I came to Ukraine, and especially when I decided to come back. She's like, we fought so hard. I worked so hard to bring you up in the US, to give you all the freedoms in the world, to let you grow up in a country that's safe and that has opportunity. What are you doing moving back there? And I said, like, you can take like you take the fish out of the water, but it always wants to swim back. It's something that inside of me that I never felt at home in the US, but I do feel at home in Ukraine. And I know it's hard to explain. I know not everybody would have the same connection. But for me, as a child of East and West, of the struggle here in Ukraine, I always felt at home from the first day I came.
I'm happy to hear that. And I'm happy that you have the permanent residency too.
Yeah,
so that
you.
it's you feeling at home is legit.
Yeah.
I know that you do a lot, not only in terms of content, but there's also a lot of fundraising going on, both for humanitarian and military needs. I know you're helping the foreign volunteers here too, those who are on the front lines, foreigners. From your experience, and I know you've been helping Ukrainian troops too, but Ukrainian troops nowadays, first of all, they speak Ukrainian. They have all the channels like Telegram, Instagram, and if they need something, it's relatively easy for them to get that circle of people to arrange stuff to be delivered. Is it the same for foreign volunteers? Is it as easy for them to get help? Or if it wasn't for your organization or your friends' organizations, foreign volunteers would be in less favorable position in terms of support?
The nice thing about foreigners is most of us have friends and family back home that have higher incomes, where when we ask for something, they will buy it. But you cannot ask the second or third or fourth time, because eventually that burns out.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for foreign volunteers, for example, to raise enough money for a cheap truck. It might be a $4,000 or $5,000 truck. But if that truck breaks down or gets blown up, it's very hard to get a second truck, if that makes sense. Especially because they're not being supplied by the Ukrainian military, or we're not getting these official BMPs or something.
Yeah.
We're using just SUVs and trucks, and I think this is why it's so important to have these connections, from someone who has actually shown what's happening. I'll give you one really kind of easy breakdown. The very first year of the war, I was raising only for humanitarian, and it was very needed at the time, because I remember I was in Irpin and Bucha, within a few weeks of it being liberated, and people were living there, but they had no supermarkets. Not even ATV was open, And I remember seeing a guy on a bicycle that came back with groceries, and I asked, "Oh, how far is the store?" And he says, "Oh, it's in Kyiv." And I said, "Whoa, like that's 20 kilometers. It's a long drive. Like to on a bicycle just to get groceries is very difficult." And you have these old, grandmas and that cannot even ride a bicycle that far. So they were very reliant on us bringing not only like bread and food, but also soap and cleaning supplies, because without it, they couldn't survive. But after the first 8 months or 9 months, when supermarkets started reopening, that need wasn't there anymore. And then we moved on to delivering deeper and deeper. We even delivered soup to frontline villages, right on the border of Belgorod, just on the Ukrainian side, but very close to where we are entering Russia now. But then I realized, I said, why are we putting ourselves in danger and allowing these people to stay in this dangerous village when it's time for them to move somewhere a bit safer? And that's when I realized this war is not going to be won by us allowing people to stay in their homes, as bad as it is for them to have to leave their frontline village houses. This war can only be won with military support. And from that day on, I said, I'm going to start fundraising only for drones, for vehicles, and other things that people really need. And the fundraisers that you see on my YouTube channel, ironically, it doesn't show the amount I've raised in Ukraine. They just don't show it because you're not allowed to donate. Or it's not available to donate within Ukraine, so it just says not available. Mm-hmm. But if you're watching from another country, you'll see that just for the one fundraiser, Razom for Ukraine, which is based in the US, that we've raised just through the video $60,000. And for a Ukrainian to be able to collect that amount of money in hryvnia from their friends and relatives is very, very difficult. Yeah. So I'm very blessed and fortunate that we have this connection in the US and into the West and throughout Europe and the UK, where that's possible. In total, raised over $100,000 for humanitarian aid, and then for military. Now we've done. I've personally done 6 or 7 vehicles, and now I'm promoting organizations like NAFO 69th, where we've now delivered over 200 vehicles just in the military. And just last week, we handed one to one of the foreign volunteer units, the Legion, to do air defense. So that's directly saving, civilian lives, over the skies when they're shooting down Shahi drones and other things coming in.
I'm so happy to hear that. As a Ukrainian, I'm very grateful personally.
Yeah,
and I'm sure our Ukrainian subscribers feel the same. I have last question, Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit personal, but as our channel is called Хвилює, which in Ukrainian means worry. A question that I ask almost every guest is, what worries you today, apart of the war?
Mm-hmm. I worry about what Ukraine will be like when the war finishes. I worry if people will come back to live here. I worry that if and when, probably when Ukraine joins the EU, if it's going to be, much more expensive. It probably will be. But also I worry if people will throw out, all the good things and just take, just go a little bit too much like the rest of Europe. And I'll give you a very easy example. I was in Vilnius in Lithuania a while back, and on one hand, everything's very clean, everything works, everything looks nice. But on the other hand, you are missing all the sellers near the metro station, all the people on the streets selling fruit. You're missing, the old grandmother, walking down and carrying her own water. And I know that it's better, a better life not to have that stuff. But at the same time, you lost a lot of the character and the soul of just, this country where there's a lot of freedom in terms of, anybody can go pick fruit from their dacha or their home and sell it on the street and then make a living from it. Anybody can kind of do anything they want that's not hurting someone else and not bothering someone else. So I don't know what Ukraine's going to be like. Maybe it won't even be my future home after this, but I know that fighting to defend Ukraine from an aggressor is the right thing to do at the time. So even though I preferred the old lifestyle and culture of Ukraine prior to 2022, and I understand things will change, and maybe not for the better in terms of my liking, it's still the right thing to do. And I hope everyone else understands that as well. And I hope that people come back to Ukraine. And I hope that the future here will be bright.
Thank you, Johnny. I promise if they impose laws on selling fruit from dacha, I'm going to let you go to my dacha and pick everything for free.
Thank you. Дякую.
Thank you, Johnny.